In a Florida prison, an interviewer sits across from a man whose name has haunted investigators and grieving families for decades. Mark Riebe once confessed to murdering 13 women. Later, he withdrew those confessions and claimed they had all been part of an arrangement with a detective. Only one murder has ever produced a conviction. Yet the details he revealed, the places he identified, and the people he hurt have left a disturbing question. Was Riebe a manipulative liar seeking attention, or one of the most prolific killers in American history? Special Agent Dennis Haley has pursued that question for nearly 25 years. Before the interview begins, Haley offers a warning. Riebe, he says, will try to control the conversation, portray himself as the victim, and make his own version of events sound completely believable. For Haley, this investigation is no longer simply a file. The missing and murdered women have become personal. His message to Riebe is direct: end the uncertainty and give the families the truth. The one case that is not in dispute began in August 1989. Donna Callahan was working a night shift at a convenience store. She was a young mother and pregnant with her second child. That night, Riebe and his brother arrived at the store. Donna was forced outside at gunpoint. She pleaded for her life, explaining that she was pregnant and had a little girl waiting for her. She disappeared, and her family began an agonizing search. Donna's father refused to let the case fade. For 3 years, he campaigned relentlessly, even petitioning the President of the United States. Federal agents eventually joined the investigation, but Donna's remains were not found until 7 years after her disappearance. She had been buried in woodland close to the home where Riebe had once lived. Investigators believe the location was convenient, familiar, and easy for the killer to revisit. Searches in the surrounding area later indicated possible human decomposition at several other sites, feeding fears that Donna might not have been the only victim hidden there. Riebe eventually pleaded guilty to taking part in Donna's kidnapping and murder, avoiding a possible death sentence. In the prison interview, however, he shifts the central blame to his brother. He admits being present but says his brother killed Donna in the back of the vehicle. That defense cannot erase his guilty plea, his participation, or the terror Donna experienced. The interviewer challenges him with a simple point: an innocent person does not normally admit involvement in the brutal murder of a pregnant mother. Riebe responds that people sometimes confess to crimes they did not commit. Only months after beginning his life sentence, Riebe started making a far more extraordinary series of statements. Over roughly 4 years, he described the murders of 13 women. Many were young, petite, and had disappeared in the same region of northern Florida. Investigators examined his background and saw a man who drifted between jobs, abused alcohol, repeatedly cheated during his marriages, and could move rapidly from charm to rage. A profiler believed power and control, rather than sex, might have been the motive. Riebe insists he respects women and is not naturally violent, but people who knew him remembered moments when his anger became sudden and frightening. When confronted with individual names, Riebe's answers shift between total denial and acknowledgement of earlier admissions. He says he never knew Bonnie Ryther, whose buried body was found in 1978. He accepts that he once confessed in connection with Lindsay Sams but denies committing the crime. He also denies abducting 14-year-old Andrea Durham, even though investigators point out that his stepchildren knew her. As the interviewer continues, Riebe grows agitated and accuses him of repeating Haley's version instead of listening. This pattern becomes central to the encounter. Riebe wants to discuss the confessions as a single fabricated arrangement, while the interviewer wants him to account for the particular knowledge attached to each missing or murdered woman. One of the most painful mysteries is the disappearance of Pamela Ray. In 1992, Pamela took her 2 children to Panama City Beach. She left them sleeping in her car for a few minutes while she tried to check into a motel. A police officer later reported seeing her speaking with an unidentified person near the motel office. After that moment, she was never seen again. The next morning, her children were discovered crying inside the vehicle, waiting for a mother who would never return. Years later, while already imprisoned, Riebe called Pamela's father and said he had killed her. He also gave investigators a confession describing an abduction and mentioned a single key taken from her hand. Detectives searched land where he claimed her remains had been buried, but they did not find the proof needed to close the case. Pamela's sister, Ronda, helped raise the children left behind. Their father died only months after hearing Riebe's claim, and the family believes the strain and grief contributed to his death. During the interview, Riebe admits telling Pamela's father that he was responsible but now says the confession was false. He cannot clearly explain why he would inflict that kind of pain on a desperate parent. He says he wished he had been able to correct the story before the man died. To Pamela's family, whether the confession was true or invented, the cruelty is undeniable. Investigators argue that Riebe knew details that a fantasist should not have known. In the case of 18-year-old Jacqueline Brant, he led Haley to a bar she had visited and then traveled to within about 100 feet of the location where her body had been found. The death had not initially been treated as a homicide. Haley does not believe that level of knowledge was a coincidence, though the available physical evidence was not enough to charge him. Riebe offers a sweeping explanation for all 13 confessions. He claims Haley supplied the case information and that he agreed to play the role of a serial killer because he wanted protection or assistance for his son. He calls it a deal with the devil. According to Riebe, when Haley failed to keep his side of the supposed arrangement, Riebe withdrew everything. Haley denies manufacturing the confessions. The interviewer also finds the story difficult to accept. Why would a man expose himself to new murder charges, possibly even execution, and maintain the lie with detectives, relatives, and his own children? The conflict becomes even sharper in the murder of 23-year-old Ronda Taylor, who was found stabbed in a car in 1990. Riebe's confession referred to black men being present around the time of the killing. Years later, DNA testing identified blood in the vehicle belonging to a black male. Investigators say this fact was not known when Riebe first spoke, making it difficult to believe that Haley could have secretly supplied it. Riebe denies giving the information and repeats that he was led into the confession. He also acknowledges telling members of his own family that he had committed the murders. His explanation is that once the supposed performance began, he had to remain in character with everyone. The result was devastating. His mother, sister, and children were forced to live with the belief that he might be a serial killer. The victims' families were pulled between hope, horror, and uncertainty. Riebe concedes that he placed his son's interests above their feelings, but he still refuses to accept responsibility for the killings beyond Donna's case. Even Haley admits the investigation contains contradictions. At times, Riebe appears convincing. At other times, parts of his accounts do not check out. But Haley continues because each unresolved name represents a real person, not merely a theory, a daughter, sister, mother, or friend whose family has been denied an answer. Riebe's repeated confessions and retractions have made that uncertainty even more painful. That distinction matters. A confession can redirect an investigation, revive hope, and force a family to imagine its worst fear in detail. A retraction does not simply restore the world to how it was before. It leaves relatives questioning whether they briefly heard the truth or became part of someone's manipulation. Detectives must also separate facts that were public, facts they may have disclosed during questioning, and facts only an offender could reasonably know. Haley sees several of Riebe's statements as falling into that final category. Riebe says the entire process was contaminated from the beginning. Without corroborating evidence, the dispute remains powerful but legally incomplete. Near the end of the interview, the conversation returns to Donna Callahan. Investigators emphasize that the crime did not resemble a robbery. No money was taken from the register. The only thing taken from the store was Donna herself. Riebe claims to feel sympathy, but Haley says he has never seen genuine remorse in him. The final confrontation turns bitter. The interviewer tells Riebe that he believes the confessions and believes the families deserve justice. Riebe says the interviewer is wrong, ends the conversation, and walks away. The accusations remain unresolved. No interview can establish guilt in cases that lack sufficient evidence, and suspicion cannot replace a conviction. But Riebe's own choices ensured that the families would continue to wonder which version, if any, was true. For Donna's daughter, the mystery is joined by a permanent loss. She visits a grave instead of receiving calls, letters, or visits from her mother. She wonders why an ordinary night at work ended in such cruelty and wishes Donna could have seen the person she became. That is the lasting center of this story. Behind every confession, denial, and argument is a family living with an empty place. Whether Mark Riebe was a serial killer or a convicted murderer who created monstrous lies, his actions deepened the suffering of people who were already waiting for answers. Until reliable evidence reveals more, the truth about the other women remains buried somewhere between his words, the investigator's belief, and the silence left behind.